My name is Kate, and I have a younger sister, Mia. Mia is 20 years old, full of energy, and always excited about life. She studies business at a good university and dreams of running her own company one day. She loves expensive clothes, hanging out with her friends, and posting perfect pictures on Instagram. Mia also thinks I am a failure. She tells her friends that I do nothing all day. She believes I am lazy because I don't have a regular job. She laughs at me when I wear simple clothes instead of designer brands. She doesn't understand my life, and she never asks about it. The truth is, I work. I just don't talk about it much. I do freelance work online, which pays well. I don't have to sit in an office from 9 to 5, and I like that. I also run a small online business, and it's doing well. But Mia doesn't see this as real work. The biggest secret is this: I pay for her education. Mia has no idea. She thinks our parents send her money for tuition and rent. She never asks where the money comes from. She just enjoys her life, thinking everything is easy. I never told her because I didn't want her to feel bad. She is young, and I thought she needed time to grow up. I wanted her to focus on her studies and enjoy being a student. I thought that maybe one day she would understand and appreciate what I did for her. But that day never came. Instead, she just became more arrogant. One evening, Mia invited me to a party. At first, I didn't want to go. I knew her friends were rich and spoiled, just like her. They always looked at me like I was invisible, like I didn't belong in their world. But Mia insisted, saying, "Come on, Kate, just for fun. Don't be boring." So I went. At the party, the music was loud, and everyone was drinking expensive cocktails. The house was huge, with shiny marble floors and a chandelier in the living room. I felt out of place, but I smiled and tried to enjoy myself. Then, Mia did something I will never forget. She stood in the middle of the room, laughing with her friends, and suddenly pointed at me. "Hey everyone, meet my big sister, Kate," she said. "She doesn't work. She just sits at home all day. Maybe we should give her something to do." Everyone turned to look at me. Some of them laughed. One guy smirked and said, "Maybe she can clean the floor?" Mia laughed louder. "Good idea. Kate, why don't you clean the floor for us?" I felt my face burn with shame. My own sister, whom I had supported for years, was humiliating me in front of her rich friends. She had no idea that I was the reason she could even afford this life. I looked at her perfect smile, at her expensive dress that I had unknowingly paid for. Something inside me broke. I didn't say a word. I just turned around and walked out of the party. Mia didn't follow me. She just kept laughing. That was the moment I decided Mia needed to learn the truth. I walked out of the party and into the cold night air. My hands were shaking, but not from the weather. I felt humiliated, furious, and exhausted all at the same time. I had spent years making sure Mia had everything she needed, and this was how she repaid me? By laughing at me in front of her friends, making me look like a joke. I didn't cry. I was too angry to cry. Instead, I took out my phone and opened my banking app. I scrolled to the automatic payments for Mia's tuition and rent. My finger hovered over the cancel button. Then, without hesitation, I pressed it. For the first time in years, I felt free. It was like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. I had been carrying Mia's responsibilities for too long, and she never even realized it. Well, that was about to change. I took a deep breath and started walking home. The streets were quiet, and the cool air helped clear my mind. As I walked, memories of Mia's words played over and over in my head. She doesn't work. Maybe she can clean the floor? The worst part wasn't just what she said. It was the way she laughed. She truly believed I was worthless. She didn't respect me. She didn't even consider that I might have a life outside of what she assumed. By the time I got home, I had made my decision. I wasn't going to say anything. I wouldn't warn her or explain myself. I would let reality hit her on its own. The next morning, I woke up feeling lighter than I had in years. I made myself coffee, sat by the window, and enjoyed the silence. No stress, no pressure, no Mia treating me like I was beneath her. Hours passed, and then my phone buzzed. It was Mia. At first, I ignored it. But then another message came. And another. She wasn't just texting, She was calling. I sighed and finally picked up. Her voice was sharp, panicked. Kate, something's wrong. My tuition payment didn't go through. And my landlord just called. He says the rent wasn't paid this month. What's happening? I took a sip of my coffee before answering. I canceled the payments. There was a long silence. Then Mia laughed, but it wasn't her usual confident laugh. It was nervous, confused. Wait, what? What do you mean? I said slowly. I've been paying for your tuition and rent for the last 2 years. But after last night, I decided I'm done. Another silence. I could almost hear her mind trying to process my words. Then, finally, she spoke again, but her voice was softer. Wait, you've been paying? Yes, but Mom and Dad. They haven't been sending you anything, Mia. It was me. I could hear her breathing, shaky and uneven. I don't understand. Why didn't you tell me? I let out a small, bitter laugh. Because I didn't want you to feel bad. I wanted to help you. But you never once thought to ask where the money was coming from. You just assumed it would always be there. She stopped, like she wanted to argue, but had no words. For the first time in a long time, Mia was speechless. Mia didn't speak for a long time. I could hear her breathing on the other end of the phone, uneven and shaky, like she was trying to make sense of everything at once. I waited, letting the silence stretch. Let her sit with the truth for a moment. Let her process the fact that the lazy, jobless sister she had mocked was the only reason she had been able to live so comfortably for the past 2 years. Finally, she found her voice again. But why? That single word held so much confusion, hurt, and disbelief that I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. Why did I pay for you? I asked. Because you're my sister. Because I wanted to help. Because I knew how much going to that university meant to you. And I didn't want you to struggle the way I did. I did it because I loved you, Mia. I heard her exhale, a shaky breath that sounded dangerously close to a sob. I didn't know. You should have told me. I scoffed. And what? Have you resent me for it? Feel guilty every time you spent money on drinks with your friends? No, Mia. You weren't supposed to know. You were just supposed to appreciate what you had. She let out another breath, and I could tell she was still struggling to process it. But last night, I knew what she was trying to say. She wanted to apologize, to explain, to justify what she had done. But there was no excuse for it. She had humiliated me in front of all those people, laughed at me, made me feel small, and all while I had been the one keeping her afloat. You made me clean the floor like I was nothing, I said, my voice sharper now. You laughed at me, Mia. Do you have any idea how that felt? I wasn't thinking, she admitted, her voice breaking slightly. I thought you were just... She stopped, probably realizing that finishing that sentence wouldn't help her case. Exactly, I said coldly. You thought, but you never actually asked. You never cared enough to wonder what I was doing with my life. You just assumed I was a failure. She didn't argue. I could hear her swallowing, struggling to find the right words, but for once, she had nothing to say. Then a small, broken whisper. What do I do now? That was the real question, wasn't it? Mia had never had to think about money before. She had never worried about rent, bills, tuition. It had all just been handled. Now, she was standing at the edge of reality, staring down at a world she had never been forced to live in. That's up to you, I said simply. But I'm done, Mia. I'm done taking care of you. You'll have to figure it out on your own. She sniffled, and I knew she was crying now. I don't know how. I closed my eyes, trying to ignore the slight ache in my chest. She was still my sister. I still loved her, despite everything. But love didn't mean enabling her anymore. You'll learn, I said. We all do. And then, before she could say anything else, I hung up. The moment I hung up, a strange emptiness settled inside me. It wasn't relief, not exactly. It wasn't satisfaction either. I had finally told Mia the truth, finally made her see what she had taken for granted. But instead of feeling victorious, I just felt tired. I stared at my phone for a long time, half expecting her to call back. Maybe she would beg me to reconsider, promise that she would change. Maybe she would get angry, try to blame me for keeping her in the dark. But the screen remained dark, and the silence in my apartment felt heavier than ever. I threw my phone on the couch and walked to the kitchen, grabbing a glass of water. My hands were shaking slightly, the weight of everything catching up to me. For 2 years, I had sacrificed so much for Mia. Late nights, extra shifts, living paycheck to paycheck, just to make sure she had everything she needed. And in return, she had humiliated me, laughed at me, treated me like I was nothing. I swallowed hard, pushing the bitterness down. This wasn't about revenge. I hadn't told her the truth to make her feel bad. I had done it because she needed to hear it, because she needed to wake up. A sharp knock on my door snapped me out of my thoughts. My heart jumped. For a second, I thought it was Mia. Maybe she had come to apologize in person. Maybe she had finally realized how much she had hurt me. But when I opened the door, it wasn't Mia standing there. It was Emma. Her arms were crossed, her face unreadable, but her eyes, those sharp, calculating eyes, were studying me carefully, like she was trying to decide whether she was still mad at me or not. "I heard what happened," she said. I sighed, leaning against the doorframe. "Of course you did." She tilted her head. Mia called me. She was crying. I resisted the urge to roll my eyes. Figures. Emma didn't react. She just stood there, waiting, giving me a chance to explain myself. But I didn't owe her an explanation. I didn't owe anyone anything. So, I asked, "Are you here to yell at me too?" Emma shook her head. "No. I wanted to hear it from you." I hesitated, then stepped aside, letting her in. She walked past me, her heels clicking against the floor, and sat down on the couch. I sat across from her, rubbing my temples. "I told Mia the truth," I said finally. "About the money. About everything." Emma exhaled slowly. "Wow. Yeah." She tapped her fingers against her knee, thinking, "She's a mess right now, you know. She doesn't know what to do." "She'll figure it out," I said. Emma gave me a look. "That's cold." I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Cold? Emma, I've spent the last 2 years breaking my back, so she could live in a fantasy world. And the second she thought I was beneath her, she didn't hesitate to humiliate me." I shook my head. "That's cold." Emma didn't argue. Instead, she leaned back, studying me again. "So what now?" I shrugged. "Now she deals with reality." Emma nodded slowly, then sighed. "You know, I never agreed with how Mia treated you. I told her she was being a brat." That surprised me. "Really?" She smirked. "Of course. I'm blunt, remember?" I shook my head, smiling slightly despite everything. "Yeah, you are." For a moment, we just sat there. And for the first time since everything had happened, I didn't feel so alone. Emma stayed longer than I expected. At first, it felt strange. She had always been Mia's best friend, always standing by her side. But now, as we sat across from each other, it didn't feel like she was here as Mia's ally. It felt like she was here for something else. Maybe curiosity, maybe guilt, maybe just to see if I was as heartless as Mia had made me out to be. She tapped her nails against the glass in her hand, watching me carefully. "Do you regret it?" The question caught me off guard. I frowned. "Regret what?" "Telling her the truth." I leaned back against the couch, letting out a slow breath. "No, I should have done it sooner." Emma nodded like she expected that answer. Mia was always sheltered. She never had to face real consequences. I laughed, shaking my head. "Yeah, I noticed." She smirked, but there was something else in her eyes, something almost sad. She set the glass down on the table and crossed her arms. "She thinks you did this to hurt her." "Of course she does," I muttered. "She thinks everything is about her." Emma tilted her head. "And it's not." I gave her a sharp look, but she didn't back down. That was the thing about Emma. She didn't sugarcoat anything. Even now, when she was supposed to be here as some kind of peacekeeper, she still pushed. I sighed, rubbing my temples. I didn't tell her to hurt her. I told her because she needed to hear it, because she needed to wake up. Emma studied me for a moment, then nodded. "Maybe you're right." Silence settled between us. It wasn't uncomfortable, but it was heavy. the weight of everything that had happened, the fallout still unraveling. Finally, Emma spoke again. "She's going to come back, you know." I scoffed. "Yeah, right. She will," she insisted. "Mia doesn't know how to be alone. She's going to miss you. Maybe not right away, but she will." I wanted to argue, to tell Emma she was wrong, that Mia would never swallow her pride enough to admit she needed me. But a small, treacherous part of me wondered if Emma was right. Emma leaned forward, resting her elbows on her knees. "The question is, what are you going to do when she does?" I didn't have an answer, and that scared me more than anything. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of my phone vibrating on the nightstand. At first, I ignored it, my head still heavy from the conversation with Emma. But the buzzing didn't stop. Groaning, I reached for it, barely glancing at the screen before answering. "Hello." There was silence on the other end. Not complete silence, just that faint sound of breathing, hesitation. Then, finally, a voice I hadn't expected to hear so soon. "I hate you." "Mia." I sat up, rubbing my eyes. "Good morning to you, too." "You ruined my life," she hissed. "Are you happy now?" I exhaled slowly. I wasn't in the mood for this. "Mia, I didn't ruin your life. I told you the truth. There's a difference." She laughed, but it was bitter, sharp. "You told me the truth." "No, you just wanted to hurt me. You wanted to make me feel small." I clenched my jaw. "If I wanted to hurt you, I wouldn't have waited this long." More silence. For a moment, I thought she had hung up. Then, softer this time, "I don't know what to do." That stopped me, because for all the anger in her voice, there was something else there too. Something raw. Mia wasn't the type to admit weakness, but now she sounded lost. I sighed, leaning back against the pillows. "Figure it out, Mia. I can't do that for you." She let out a shaky breath. "You really don't care anymore, do you?" I closed my eyes. "I don't know." Another pause. Then a quiet, almost broken, "Okay." And then the line went dead. I stared at my phone for a long time after that. The rest of the day passed in a blur. I kept checking my phone, half expecting Mia to call again, to send a message, something. But there was nothing, just silence. It felt strange, like something was missing, though I didn't know if that was a good or bad thing. By the evening, I had convinced myself that I didn't care. I ordered some takeout, threw on a random movie, and tried to focus on anything but the nagging thought at the back of my mind. I had done the right thing. I had told her the truth. Whatever happened next was on her. Halfway through my dinner, my phone buzzed. My heart jumped before I even realized what I was hoping for. But when I picked it up, the screen showed an unknown number. I hesitated before answering. "Hello." A deep breath on the other end. Then, a voice I hadn't heard in a long time. "Hey, it's Daniel." I almost dropped my fork. Of all the people I expected to hear from, he was at the bottom of the list. I cleared my throat. "Daniel. Wow. Didn't think I'd ever hear from you again." There was a pause. "Yeah, I know." Silence stretched between us. It wasn't comfortable, but it wasn't exactly tense either. Just unfamiliar. "What do you want?" I finally asked. "I heard about Mia," he said. "She called me." That surprised me. "She did?" "Yeah, she was a mess. She said you told her everything." I didn't say anything. I wasn't sure what to say. Daniel sighed. "Look, I'm not calling to start anything. I need to know. Did you really tell her everything?" A bitter laugh escaped me. "I don't know. Depends on what you mean by everything." "Don't play games," he said, his voice tight. "Did you tell her about us?" I swallowed hard. My fingers tightened around the phone. "No," I said. "Not yet." Daniel exhaled, a mix of relief and something else I couldn't quite place. "Good, because if she finds out, I don't even want to think about what she'd do." I leaned back, staring at the ceiling. "Yeah, me neither." I sat there for a moment, gripping my phone like it was the only thing holding me to reality. Daniel's words echoed in my head, blending with the thoughts I had been pushing down all day. If Mia found out about us, as if it was still a possibility, as if it wasn't just a matter of time. Daniel stayed quiet on the line, waiting for me to say something. I wasn't sure what he expected. Reassurance? A promise that Mia would never know. What do you want me to say? I finally asked. I don't know, he admitted. I guess I just want to make sure we're on the same page. I laughed under my breath. Same page? I don't even know what book we're reading. He didn't laugh. I'm serious. I don't want her to find out. And you think I do? My voice was sharper than I intended. This isn't some game for me, Daniel. I told her about Emily, because I had to. Because keeping that secret was killing me. But this is different. A pause. Is it? The question made my stomach twist. Of course, it was different. Wasn't it? I ran a hand through my hair, exhaling slowly. Mia's not stupid. She knows there's more. She could hear it in my voice. It's only a matter of time before she starts putting pieces together. Then we make sure she doesn't. His certainty made me uneasy. You think we can just pretend nothing happened? It was a mistake, he said quickly. We both know that. It didn't mean anything. I closed my eyes for a second. If it didn't mean anything, then why did my chest feel tight every time I thought about it? Why did my hands shake when I tried to push it from my mind? I have to go, I muttered. Wait. I hung up before he could say anything else. My head was buzzing, my skin hot with frustration. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe that it was nothing, that Mia would never have to know, that I could just move forward. But the guilt was already eating away at me. I looked at my phone again. No messages from Mia, just silence. And for the first time, I wasn't sure which scared me more, her knowing the truth or never hearing from her again. The silence stretched through the night, heavy and suffocating. I checked my phone at least a dozen times, hoping to see Mia's name flash on the screen, but nothing came. Every minute that passed felt like a countdown to something inevitable. Sleep didn't come easily. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw flashes of that night. The way it started, the way it ended, the way I told myself it didn't matter. But deep down, I knew it did. The guilt wasn't something I could just shake off. It clung to me, whispering in my ear that everything was about to collapse. When my alarm went off, I felt like I had barely slept. I dragged myself out of bed, trying to push the weight of last night to the back of my mind. Maybe today would be normal. Maybe I could pretend. I checked my phone again, still nothing from Mia. My chest tightened. At work, everything felt off. The usual routine didn't ground me the way it used to. Every time someone said my name, I flinched. Every time my phone buzzed, my stomach twisted. It was like waiting for a bomb to go off. Except I had no idea when or where it would happen. Then, during lunch, it did. Mia finally texted, "We need to talk." My hands felt numb as I stared at the message. Those 4 words carried so much weight, I could barely breathe. I typed out a response, deleted it, started again. Okay. When? Seconds stretched into minutes. Then, tonight, my place. I stared at the screen, my pulse hammering in my ears. There was no way this was going to be a normal conversation. She knew. Maybe not everything, but enough. The rest of the day was a blur. By the time I got to Mia's apartment, my palms were slick with sweat. I hesitated at the door before knocking, swallowing down the lump in my throat. She opened it almost immediately. Her face was unreadable, her arms crossed. "Come in." Her voice was calm, but that didn't comfort me. If anything, it scared me more. I stepped inside, the air thick with something unspoken. She didn't tell me to sit, so I stood awkwardly in the living room, waiting. She turned to face me, taking a deep breath. "I want you to be honest with me. Completely honest." My stomach dropped. She reached for her phone, tapped the screen a few times, then turned it toward me. A picture. A blurry one, but clear enough. Me. Daniel. That night. I stopped breathing. Mia's voice was steady, but her eyes burned with something sharp. "Tell me everything. Now." I could feel the blood drain from my face as the picture burned itself into my mind. I wanted to scream, to deny everything, but the truth hung in the air between us like a thick fog, suffocating me. The blurry image wasn't clear enough to make out every detail, but it was enough to make the accusation impossible to ignore. It was us, the two of us, caught in a moment that I couldn't erase, no matter how hard I tried. Mia's eyes were fixed on me, waiting for an answer. Her arms were crossed tightly, her jaw clenched. She wasn't angry yet. She was calm, almost eerily calm. But I knew that it was only a matter of time before everything exploded. And it was all because of my stupid, selfish mistake. I opened my mouth to speak, but no words came out. I swallowed, trying to steady myself. The shame I felt wasn't something I could hide. Not from her, not from myself. I had to say something, but what could I say? How could I explain something that there was no explanation for? I'm sorry. I finally choked out, my voice barely above a whisper. The words felt hollow, meaningless, like they were just a formality. I knew it wouldn't be enough. It could never be enough. Mia's face hardened, her eyes narrowing. Sorry? That's it. You think sorry is going to fix this? I opened my mouth to protest, but the words stuck in my throat. What could I possibly say? She wasn't wrong. What had happened was unforgivable. There was no quick fix, no magic apology that would erase the betrayal. I had crossed a line I could never come back from. Do you know how much this hurts? Mia continued, her voice shaking now, though she was still holding herself together. I trusted you. I trusted you more than anyone, and you. She cut herself off, taking a deep breath. I could see her fighting to keep her composure. I don't even know who you are anymore. The weight of her words hit me like a punch to the gut. I had done this to her. I had shattered everything we had. The guilt felt unbearable, and the silence that followed was even worse. It was like the longer she didn't speak, the heavier the tension grew. I never wanted to hurt you, I said, my voice cracking. I felt like a coward, standing there with no real defense, no justification. It was a mistake, Mia, a huge mistake, and I regret it. I wish I could take it back. She shook her head slowly, her eyes brimming with tears. It's not just a mistake, though, is it? It's the fact that you didn't even think of me when you did it. Her voice faltered, and she looked away, taking a moment to compose herself. I gave you everything, and you didn't even care. I reached out to her, but she took a step back, shaking her head. Don't touch me. The words stung more than I could have ever imagined. I'd never seen her like this, so cold, so distant. The connection we once had seemed to be slipping through my fingers, and I couldn't stop it. I know I messed up, I said, the words feeling like lead in my mouth. I know I can't take it back, but please don't leave me like this. She looked at me for a long moment, her expression unreadable. I could see the conflict in her eyes, the pain, the anger, the disappointment. But there was something else, too. Something that made me hold my breath, waiting for the verdict. I don't know if I can do this anymore, she said quietly. I need time, okay? I need time to figure out if I can even look at you the same way again. The words hit me like a slap. I couldn't believe what I was hearing, but deep down, I knew I deserved it. I had destroyed everything. My world was crashing down around me, and there was nothing I could do to stop it. Mia turned and walked away, leaving me standing there, completely shattered. I stood there in silence, watching as she walked away. Each step she took seemed to echo in my mind, reminding me of the massive mistake I had made. The door clicked shut behind her, and all I was left with was the deafening stillness of the room. My thoughts raced, desperately trying to find some way to fix things, but nothing came. It was like everything I touched turned to dust. The weight of my actions sank in deeper with every passing second. Mia had trusted me, loved me, and I had thrown it all away in the blink of an eye. The guilt gnawed at me like a constant reminder of how much I had destroyed. I had lied, I had hurt her, and now I was paying the price. But could I even fix this? Could I make her believe me again? I reached for my phone, my hands shaking. I scrolled through the messages, the ones that seemed so innocent when I first saw them. But now, they felt like a cruel joke. Each word, each sentence felt like a slap to my face. The pictures, the late-night texts, the secret meetings, it all came rushing back, and I couldn't escape it. I wanted to call her, to beg her to come back, to tell her that I was sorry. No, not sorry enough. Sorry didn't fix things. Not when trust had been shattered so completely. I couldn't find the right words, and even if I could, I wasn't sure they would matter anymore. Would she even pick up the phone? Would she believe me if I said I made a mistake? But I couldn't just let it end like this. I couldn't let everything we had become a distant memory. She deserved more than that. Mia deserved someone who wouldn't break her heart. And I had failed her. I looked at the phone in my hand, willing myself to make a decision. But my finger hovered over the screen, unsure of what to do. I had already hurt her too much. Was it even worth trying to fight for us? I didn't know. But I couldn't give up without trying. With a deep breath, I sent the message. I know I've hurt you. I don't expect forgiveness right away. But please, just let me try to make things right. I hit send and immediately regretted it. What if it was too late? What if she was done with me for good? I set the phone down, my heart racing. The waiting game had begun. The hours passed in a blur. I stared at my phone, waiting for a response, my mind unable to focus on anything else. Every time it buzzed, my heart skipped a beat, only to be disappointed by another message that wasn't from her. I kept imagining her reading my text, deliberating whether or not to respond. And then, finally, the screen lit up. A message from Mia. It was simple, short. We need to talk. I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. My first instinct was to call her, but I knew it would only make things worse. No, I needed to respect her space, let her process everything. But the thought of not hearing her voice, of not being able to apologize in person, felt unbearable. I replied quickly, trying to sound calm, even though inside I was a mess. When? I'm ready. She didn't reply right away, and I was left there, staring at my screen again, anxiety creeping over me. Each second felt like an eternity, like I was waiting for the final blow, the confirmation that everything I'd feared had come true. Then, after what felt like hours, my phone buzzed again. Tonight, at my place. 7 p.m. It was all I needed. She wasn't ready to forgive me, but at least she was willing to talk. It was a small chance, but it was a chance. I could work with that. The rest of the afternoon dragged on. I tried to distract myself, but the constant thoughts of her and what had happened between us wouldn't leave my mind. Every memory felt tainted now. Each laugh we'd shared, each quiet moment, now a painful reminder of what I had destroyed. I could still picture her face when I told her the truth. The hurt in her eyes was something I'd never forget. I'd broken her, and now the question was whether I could ever fix it. Was I even worthy of that chance? By the time 7 p.m. arrived, I was a bundle of nerves. I left the house early, not wanting to be late. The drive felt like it took forever, but when I finally parked outside her apartment, I sat there for a moment, gathering my thoughts. What would I say? How could I explain myself without sounding like I was making excuses? Taking a deep breath, I walked up to the door and rang the bell. My heart was pounding in my chest, and I couldn't help but wonder if this was the moment where everything would finally fall apart. The door creaked open, and there she was, standing in the doorway with her arms crossed. Her face was unreadable, but I could see the tension in her shoulders, the way she held herself like she was bracing for something. My heart hammered in my chest as I stepped inside, not sure what to expect next. "Come in," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. It was as if she wasn't sure whether she wanted me there or not. I hesitated for a moment, but I knew I couldn't back out now. This was it, the moment of truth. I walked in, trying to gather myself, trying to keep my voice steady. "Mia, don't," she interrupted, holding up a hand. Just sit down." I nodded, swallowing hard, and took a seat on the couch. I could feel the distance between us, the emotional wall she'd built. She sat down across from me, her eyes avoiding mine. The silence between us was thick, suffocating. I wanted to say so many things, but the words felt stuck in my throat. She finally spoke, her voice quiet but filled with hurt. "Why, Jake? Why did you do it?" I could feel the weight of her words, each one like a punch to my chest. I knew I didn't deserve her, but I couldn't just let her think I didn't care. "Mia, I don't have a good excuse. I messed up. I hurt you, and I hate myself for it." She shook her head, her eyes welling up with tears. "You say that, but you don't understand. She paused, taking a shaky breath. "I trusted you, Jake. I loved you, And you betrayed that. You threw it all away for what? A mistake? A stupid decision. Her words stung, each one cutting deeper than the last. I wanted to scream, to beg her to understand, but I knew she was right. I had done something unforgivable, something that had shattered the trust between us. The guilt weighed heavy in my chest, and I couldn't help but feel like I was suffocating in it. I know, I said, my voice breaking. I know I ruined everything, and I'm sorry. But please, Mia, don't give up on us. Don't give up on what we had. She looked at me then, her eyes full of pain and disbelief. I don't know if I can ever forgive you, Jake. I don't know if I can forget what you did. The words hit me like a blow to the stomach. I had prepared myself for this, but hearing her say it out loud made it all the more real. I'll do anything, I whispered, anything to make it right. She stood up suddenly, her hands trembling as she wiped the tears from her face. I don't even know what that means anymore. I stared at her, trying to process what she had just said. It felt like the ground beneath me had given way, and I was falling into an abyss I couldn't escape. The shock kept me silent for a moment. I was searching for the right words, but nothing felt right. Nothing seemed enough to express what I was feeling. Why? The word came out of my mouth in a whisper. My throat felt tight, and my heart pounded like it was trying to break free from my chest. Why would you do that to me? She looked at me, her eyes wide with a mix of guilt and something else I couldn't place. I didn't know how to stop. It just happened, and then it was too late to turn back. Her voice trembled, but it didn't soften the sting of her betrayal. I wanted to scream, to throw something, to run away from it all, but I stayed frozen, staring at her, unable to look away. It felt like I was stuck in a nightmare, but I couldn't wake up. Too late. I repeated. The anger started bubbling up, pushing through the hurt. Too late for what? Too late to tell me the truth? Too late to stop lying to me? She bit her lip and nodded, her hands shaking. I'm so sorry. I never meant for any of this to happen. I was just confused. Confused. That was the excuse she was offering? I couldn't believe it. All this time, she had been the one person I trusted most, and now she was telling me it was all because of confusion? It didn't make sense. Do you know what this does to me? To us? I shouted, the words coming out with a force I hadn't intended. But I couldn't help it. Do you even care? Do you care about what you've done to us, to me? She flinched, and for a moment, I thought I saw real regret in her eyes. But it didn't change anything. She had crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. She had betrayed me in a way I couldn't forgive, not now. Not like this. I don't know what to do now, she said quietly, almost pleading. I don't know how to fix this. There was nothing she could do. The trust was shattered. The foundation of everything we had was crumbling right before my eyes, and there was no way to put it back together. I don't think I can do this anymore, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. The finality of my words hung in the air between us. She looked at me as if waiting for me to say something else, but I didn't. There was nothing else to say.
Thank you very much for watching. Did you like this story? Like, subscribe, and write a comment about your opinion.